Welcome to the Blue Byron Books podcast. This is going to be a fun episode. I am joined from Denver, Colorado. Chris is joining us. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here and to do this.
Now, we were just saying before this, Denver, sneaky is like the most sunny city, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, Colorado in general is sunny. Um, and this time of year is weird because you're like getting into that early spring. And it can like snow tomorrow and be awful and be sunny the next day and perfect. So,
Do you like that? Do you like those swings or?
it's nice just because the snow goes really fast because I'm not a huge fan of snow. So it's nice because like when there is a ton of snow, it melts fairly quickly. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It can be tough sometimes, like with how bipolar the weather can be. But I like it for the most part here. I lived here my whole life, so I don't really know
Yeah.
anything different.
Okay. Yeah, I once moved so a friend of mine who's from originally Virginia, and then we became very close friends in Chicago. In 2015, he moved to Denver and he needed someone to drive the U-Haul. So he had like his car that he was moving out there and then all the stuff in this U-Haul. So he bought me a plane ticket back, paid for all the gas and hotel. We stayed overnight in Omaha. Um, and when we left Chicago, it was like 40 degrees and just gray, gray. The Midwest tends to have a gray stretch for quite a long time. And this was actually in I want to say April. And so we drive there. Fun fact, the U-Haul, I don't know if it's still like this. The U-Haul would clock out at like 85 miles an hour. So he keeps calling me saying, go faster. You're not keeping up." And I'm like, I my foot is literally on the floor. Um, we slept for a few hours in Omaha, and then we got to Denver, and it was 75 and sunny.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
he's like, "Yeah, I made the right move, made the right decision."
Yeah, that's a good welcome for sure. Yeah.
But then I stayed like another few days or a week, not quite a week, and it snowed by the time I left.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, like beginning of February through even like May sometimes, but usually around like end of April. It could be sunny and 75 or it could be snowy and under 30 degrees any given day.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
it's interesting. No. Um, well, great having you on. It's been a pleasure meeting and collaborating with you so far. What got you interested in writing and books?
Hmm. Well, I've always been a reader. Um, I've read books since I was a really young kid. They were an escape for me, for sure. There wasn't very much television in our household,
Okay.
so reading was really sort of important to me. I read a lot as a kid, and growing up, that stayed for a long time. And I think I'm a musician and and a music producer, and so I think what I love about reading and books is that it sort of hits the nervous system the same way. Um,
Mm,
it can create like it's the work feels the same while you're doing it and after it's done when you're experiencing it. There's something that's very kindred about those two things, and I think that that's one of the reasons like why I decided to start writing was because I didn't know anything about making music. I just was a music lover. And then I realized how rewarding that part of the process could be. So I was like, okay, so maybe I should just duplicate that with the book experience because I've always been a reader. I
mm.
was like, okay, well, why don't I try and see what I can do here with some writing? So,
Yeah, I'm really energized by your projects and the poetry. I you read some good poetry. I
Hmm.
enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah, poetry has always been something that I've been attached to. I actually there was like a young poet like collaboration book that they put together when I like from all different kinds of schools in Colorado and across the country when I was really young, and I wrote a poem that actually got published in that book when I was like I don't know like 12 years old.
Okay.
So I've been writing poetry for a really long time, and yeah, it's just I've been writing and reading poetry for a really long time. It's just again, I think it's the way that it hits the nervous system, and it does the same thing that I think music does. So,
Real quick, I don't mean to turn this into like a collaboration session, but what are you thinking for the cover of the poetry book?
ooh, I actually was thinking about that lately, and I've been doing some like brainstorming on that. I am a fan of um, like liminal imagery. So like something that sort of feels like isolated but comforting at the same time. Like it's sort of like this weird juxtaposition of eerie and comforting. So
What word did you use?
liminal,
Illuminating?
liminal,
Liminal.
Liminal, liminal. It means like on the threshold of something. So
Yeah, I see that. I'm
yeah,
getting
but something that would be like, I mean, obviously not like too creepy or eerie, because that it can definitely go that way. Yeah, something
yeah,
that's
I have
yeah,
I
yeah.
Googled liminal.
Yeah, so like I really like the one like at the gas station with the lights. I really like street lamps. I think that there's something like kind of interesting about and comforting about street lamps. So not necessarily like empty
Yeah.
rooms like a lot of these are, but like something that like sort of feels like this, but it maybe leads a little bit more artistic, maybe a little bit more hopeful. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I like your word there, hopeful. And
yeah.
I figured it would be something more like minimal,
Hmm.
more like something with space and not just like, just doing its thing.
Yeah. Something that's not too on the nose, you know what I mean? Like I don't
Yeah.
really I'm not a fan of that. Like I think in terms of visual art, I'm a big fan of stuff that really is up for interpretation um, in a really big way. So, yeah.
Nice. Do you have what are three books that have influenced you?
Well, we talked about it last time, I think. But one of my favorite book probably is Frankenstein. Um, I so that obviously makes the list because there's just something about that book that I think that resonates with me. It's amazing. Another book that I really like is called Residence on Earth.
Okay.
It's by a Spanish poet named Pablo Neruda, and a lot of it is it's originally written in Spanish, but the book was translated into English, and I, as someone who doesn't know that much Spanish, read it in English, obviously. But yeah, there's it's like a collection of poems. He does a lot of his wheelhouse was like love poems, but I think I like Residence on Earth because it's a little breaking that mold a little bit. There's a lot of other abstract ideas, language, imagery that really just resonates with me. I think Residence on Earth alone as a title is super poetic and interesting. So yeah, and then I think the last book um, is probably Where the Wild Things Are. And I know that that's like a
Oh,
kid's
okay.
book, but I mean, that book has
That's
always
fine.
yeah, resonated with me in a way that I can't really yeah, I mean, I read that book as an adult sometimes, and I think that was an adult that my parents would, I mean, a book that my parents would read to me when I was a kid, and um, yeah, the art, the ideas, is just yeah, it's a fun book. So,
I mean, I recently read The Little Engine That Could not
yeah,
long ago. That's a children's book. I think it's really interesting to go back to children's books. Um, because too you can read it pretty quickly and kind
Hmm.
of get that feeling you had as a kid
Hmm.
reading it or whenever you first discovered it. What remind me again about where the wild things are?
So I understand what you're saying because yeah, it's sort of like this nostalgia factor. I think that that's like a big thing. But like basically, where the wild things are is like this kid who feels um like he's misbehaving, and so he gets like sent to his room without dinner, and then basically creates a whole world out of his imagination where he sails to like a foreign land. There's weird creatures there, and he like embraces his wild side. He, parties with them all night and does whatever he wants, like who does the misbehaving and sort of like gets homesick after a while and
Mm,
wants to go home and then understands um sort of like the duality of both. Like there's at least what I get from it is that um there's a special place for both of those things. Like sometimes we have to go where the wild things are and have fun, and sometimes we want to be home and where our comfort is. So yeah.
huh. I got reread that. I got
Hmm.
reread that when I get a chance.
Yeah, it's like, and it's obviously something that's more present with kids' books, but the art, the visual art, is really cool.
It's
There's something about,
distinctive.
yeah,
I
yeah,
I, I know the cover for sure.
yeah, yeah.
Huh.
So,
Is there a book you continually return to?
um, I mean, yeah, the obvious one again is just Frankenstein. I think that there's something about that. It's so deliciously allegorical, and
Deliciously local.
yeah, it is. Like, there's just so many levels of like of the human experience and the human emotions that just I find new layers every single time. It's one of those books where it's a different book that I reread it every single time. Um, and I mean, other than that, I try and read The Alchemist off like maybe every few years.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
because again, I think that book like is different every time you read it. You notice different things, different lessons, different little nuances. Um, so yeah.
I should reread that again.
Yeah.
I could use that right now.
Yeah. It's one of those books
I
where it's like,
tried.
yeah.
Go ahead.
It's one of those books where it's like you can, um, it can come to you in like a space where you might be needing it and hit you in like
Yeah.
just the right place. So, yeah.
The treasure is the journey.
Hmm.
That's what I got from it.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but there's also like little things too. Like
Yeah.
one of the things that really resonated with me this last time that I read it was like how when Santiago gets to Africa and like tries to be kind to someone, and then the kind person essentially steals all of his money, how
Mhm.
he reacted to that, like in the face of someone being unkind to you being kind, and how you like how he reacted to that was something that I think was helpful to me in that moment. You know what I mean? But there's other little things too. You know what I mean? That I've found before that was something that I needed to hear in that moment. So,
I tried with that book. You know, we were talking about speaking Spanish. I I see. I'm,
mhm.
you know, I'm not I'm better than terrible. I'm not good. I'm probably not average, but manageable.
Mhm.
And I thought one of my ideas was I didn't like the app. I didn't like using Duolingo and
Mm.
being on the phone to like learn something. So I bought The Alchemist in Spanish,
Mm.
El Alchemista.
Mhm.
And I thought, here I'll take the English and the Spanish and I'll like read them page by page simultaneously so I can like see what's
Mm.
going on.
Okay.
I got to page 10 and I stopped. So
I bet that's hard. Yeah, that's an undertaking for sure. Yeah.
it took a lot longer than I imagined it would.
Mm.
Um, the best way to learn another language, probably just immersion, I would
Hmm.
guess.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
Almost like survival is dependent on it in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you have to like go out, if you step outside and almost, 99% of the people that are surrounding you speak the language and you can only get so like you can only get so far by speaking English, you know what I mean? And that just, I mean, it creates a situation where you have to learn or, you're not going to survive very long, I feel like. So,
Yeah, I gifted that book to my Spanish native friend,
mm,
The Alchemist. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
mm.
Do you read more for a language, ideas, or um, feeling, and how has that changed over the years?
I'd say I read for feeling. I think that it's about
Mm,
um I like the atmospheric qualities of stories and books. So like the feeling that it gives me, the immersive quality of the writing. Um so I think that that's feeling and language, because I think that both of those things work very much hand in hand. Um Language, I think, is like the modality for the rhythm of the book, which is obviously something that resonates with me as a musician. So, like, the language, I think, is like the way to sort of the pacing that you move through the sentence, the words, the paragraph, the whole thing. So, I would say language because of that. But yeah, the feeling I think is the most important thing to me, and I think
mm.
that's that's always been the same, and I think that that's always been how I read. Just because I think, yeah, that's the most important thing to me is the feeling that it gives me, the feeling that it's trying to convey, the emotions that are happening in the book, in the story, in the lesson. So, yeah, I mean, that's probably the most important part to me is the feeling.
I want to go back to Frankenstein for a minute.
Mm,
Mary Shelley was like 18 when she wrote that, right?
yeah.
And so you were talking about like like the layers of humanity and uh the complexity of it. Like what comes to your mind first when you realize that like a 18, I think she took like 2 years to write it, so maybe she was
Hmm.
like 20 when she finished it.
Hmm.
When someone that young wrote that still affects you and many, many others, like what goes through your mind?
Um, just the depth of the human experience that she must have had at that age. Like she must have been through some stuff. You know what I mean? And she did. Like her life was hard. And I think that um that's how it works, right? Like the best art comes from the people that are the most damaged usually.
Yeah.
And um I think that it's not only was she incredibly talented, I think like just naturally talented, but I think that she also um, just had, yeah, how the life experiences that were informing the amount of grief and um, sadness and just the raw emotion. Because I mean, there's fear, there's grief, there's um it's a spectrum of emotions in that book, so for someone that young to be able to understand that, she must have had just crazy amount of life experience. So that's really what I think about a lot, is
Yeah.
like, holy crap, this is um coming from someone that really understood the depth of these emotions, which is not I mean, maybe that's something that was more common then, like back
Mhm.
then. But these days, I feel like you'd be hard pressed to find an 18-year-old that would be able to, you know, really be able to create something like that. So,
So it speaks to the time, right? Because back then, maybe your life is a lot more compressed
Mm,
based
yeah.
on life and the difficulty of everyday life, and you had to grow up probably quicker. And like an 18-year-old back then is probably not an 18-year-old today, but I
Mm,
my mind kind of goes to like if she was 18 and wrote this and it still has this lasting power where like over 200 years later people are really affected by it, like what's not to say that someone young today can't do that with all the resources available and information and like a computer, something to type on, like um that's something I'm curious about.
yeah, I think that's true. I mean, 18 then is definitely not the same as 18 now. And the idea of, yeah, I mean, like it reinforces this lesson, right? Of like, there isn't like a spot or a fixed set of circumstances that
Yeah.
creates, or where you have to create good art. Like it can come from anyone at any time, you know. I think it's inspiring in a lot of ways. Like that's how I feel about it. Is it's inspiring, you know. So
Yeah. Huh. What's your I'm curious what your daily consumption of creativity looks like.
hmm. Well, I'm cross-disciplined in a lot of ways with creativity. Like I have um, experience with visual arts, music, obviously, and writing and books. So it's constant, I'd say, in a lot of ways. Um, and I think like different things, different parts, different kinds of art feel different for where I'm at in my life at any given moment. Um, Art is very environmental, I think. Um, so that's how I use it. I use it to create my environment. Um, obviously spend a lot of time listening to music. I spend a good amount of time um, reading, just because that's, I think, especially towards the end of my day, reading is something that's sort of like, it feels more like a winding down of the nervous system. It tends to like, and that's
Hmm.
probably because I have been doing it for so long. Um,
Yeah.
so it's like a comfort thing, like reading is a comforting thing to do like towards the end of the day usually. I also find like what I've been experimenting with lately is sort of like um, consuming art that isn't TV um, towards the end of the day, and how that kind of seems to affect my dreams and um,
Mm.
and even how I wake up the next morning. Um, because I think like when I listen to music before bed or even while I'm sleeping, I think that that's something that's it's interesting for dreams, and I tend to wake up in a better mood. I will wake up um, feeling a little like more creative, like I'm on the right frequency already. So
Interesting. Yeah,
yeah.
you and I discussed dreams
Hmm.
before. Yeah, and I brought up my friend who I moved to Denver and how I've had at least like five dreams that he's been in. He's like come into my dreams, and it's like, what does that mean? I probably had like five separate dreams last night, just like sleeping, waking up, sleeping, waking up, and I can't remember. My nephews were in one actually. Um, do you write down your dreams?
Sometimes me and my girlfriend will um, we both dream quite often, and we'll tell each other about a dream that's particularly like it was particularly hard to process. or if it's good or weird. So like that's part of how I think that's what's nice is that like she'll be like, I had this really weird dream last night, and she'll tell me about it. I'm like, oh, that's interesting, and I feel like that's sort of like the record of it because then I'll be like, well, I wonder if this means this, and then she'll do the same in reverse. So like that's sort of how we keep record of it, but I think it would be interesting to write down all of them and then really be able to like have like a reference of like, okay, I
Like a
felt like this and
catalog.
yeah, like I felt like this in my life at one point, and it would be interesting to see like when I felt like that before and what I was dreaming about, you know. So it's a really interesting way to capture information, you know. So
But when you write about a dream, do you just make like a almost like a subject line of an email, like this happened, or do you write a paragraph about it, or like,
I think it's usually for me like as much as I can remember detail wise, and then how it made me feel. Like the emotions I think are important.
mm, yeah.
Um, whether that's like fear or um, happy, which isn't as often, but um, or like strangeness, isolation, anxiety, or nostalgia. So I think that's
Mm.
like because then it ties like the event, like what was happening to a specific emotion. So
So you had mentioned that you didn't really grow up with like a TV on in the background and stuff. Do you do you watch stuff on your phone or computer, or as far as creativity goes, like do you consume, now that we have the internet and it's not necessarily like you're tuning into TV, do you apply that same concept to like digital spaces, or do you consume stuff there too?
I consume stuff on digital spaces for sure. I mean, I prefer older methods. Like I have a record player that I listen to records on. And I
Yeah,
prefer,
same
I mean,
here.
like I prefer that. There's just something about it that's really intentional, and I think that that's sort
Yeah,
of like
yeah,
where
yeah,
what
yeah.
like digital spaces can really extract the intention to where it's like just so passive. Like I'm just going to turn on TV and find it. And I was actually talking about that with my nephews recently, where I was because I showed them my record player and I was showing them how it worked, and we were talking about how like back in the day, if you wanted to watch a movie, you had to like pop open the DVD or the VHS and like throw it in and like do all that stuff. Whereas like nowadays, all you do is just click 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 on a remote. So I do consume through digital spaces. I do like have TV every now and then. I think TV for me has two functions. One, it's like it's comforting again, like reading is. So it can be kind of like on in the background, and it's like a show that I've watched a million times. Um, almost like an album that I've listened to for a million times.
Yeah.
And then there's like the exploratory type of watching where I'll like hear about something that's really interesting or really striking and um, sit down and consume it. Because I think like there's so much digital media, especially with TV and movies and stuff like that, that's so artistic and so pushing the bounds, and I love to get into that too. So
What medium are you consuming those on,
um
or platform?
yeah, I like Netflix because Netflix I think has a lot of more original content. Um
Okay.
and I mean I also like using Disney Plus just because I've seen a lot of the movies on it like a million times.
Wait, what did you
So
say?
I like Disney Plus because I've seen a lot of those
Oh, Disney
movies
Plus. Yeah.
like a million
Yeah.
times. You know what I mean? Because they have like all the old Disney movies and stuff like that that I watched when I was a kid. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That reminds me, I used to have my friend's login for Disney Plus. It's probably been a year since I tried logging on, and it
Hmm.
worked. Maybe I should try that again, see if it worked. Because now they're all cracking down on this stuff, right?
Yeah. They got to get their money from everyone. So,
But then it's becoming like this like as expensive as cable again. If you do Hulu over here, Disney over here, Netflix here, Amazon over here,
hmm
might be missing some Apple Plus or Apple TV, like um yeah, it's interesting. Huh. Disney Plus. There's such an advantage of having that back catalog.
hmm
What of the works of art that you're drawn to, do you find any patterns within them?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Um, One of the biggest things I'm looking for, or that I've been drawn to with art, is juxtaposition and duality. Um, I think that that's a theme that I will always return to in my life. Um, and I think that there's just something about it that's like so human because we can being two things at once or being two opposing things at once is like a basic building block of storytelling of life. Um,
Mm,
Two opposing forces and two like light and dark even, or if you want to get as basic as that, like that's something that
yeah.
always um, and that always captures me, I think. Um, I also like the idea of, like we were talking about, like liminality, like something about the juxtaposition of um, eerie and comforting. Um, there's like something about that that makes a lot of sense to me for some reason, and I wonder why that is something that happens. Like, why do we like things that are two things at once? And what is that circling around on itself? Like, how does that work in the brain, in the heart? Like, what's happening there? Um, that's a huge part of it too. And I think besides that, one of the things that I'm looking for in all art that I consume is depth. Like, I want it to be deep.
Okay.
I like, I mean, surface value stuff is okay, but I really want that like deep meaning. I want to keep folding back layers and finding new stuff. So, yeah.
Do you ever do you have a favorite painting or like painter?
Mm. Um, I like um, I like Picasso. I've always
Okay.
liked Pablo Picasso because I think that yeah, he was a one of one. I think that he also just wasn't afraid to push boundaries clearly, and I like that it's not. I like that there's a theme underneath the chaos. Like there's a surface level thing that you're looking at, and it's like, oh, that's interesting to look at. The balance, the colors,
Mhm.
the composition is interesting, but there's usually a deeper meaning like below that that I really like. Um, so that's definitely one for sure. Um, I can't really think of any other painters that I like. Um, I mean, I'm a huge fan of street art. I like Banksy. So like graffiti is that's something that I've always been attached to again because I think that there's like a theme there. There's a statement. Um, so yeah.
Do you find that you're more like influenced slash inspired by people from the past or contemporary time?
Hmm. I think like the past is good for structure and for um, understanding. Um, yeah, like for structure, for building on, for places to start, for common ground. But I think that presently I am more interested in emotion, the emotion of the world that we live in right now, of um, because I think that it's different, right? Like if you want to go back to Mary Shelley, like there's emotion there, but it's an emotion that's timeless, but it's also an emotion that's there's emotion there that's very much tied into the time. Um, and I think that there's a lot of people alive right now, artists alive right now that make art that specifically speaks to the emotion that we're going through on a day-to-day basis here in this present time. So, and in
Like
the
the
future, like,
overstimulation, over
yeah,
anxiety of everything.
yeah. And like yeah, with like the internet and the politics and all of that stuff, like all of the environments that we're in um is something that I think is very interesting to me. And I think like then building on that, what we know about now and the past, but more now and like where we're going. So the future, I think, is because that's something that I write about a lot is sort of like what the future could look like. Um, and I think that's informed more by the present than anything. So,
Yeah. What's your creative process look like? Like at its best, what's the environment like? What's the mood like? What bring me into your space in your mind.
um, I think I alternate between intensity and recovery. Um,
Oh,
a-
okay. I like that.
and so intent by intensity, I don't mean pressure. Like I don't really do well with. I don't think art does well with pressure when the pressure is on the art. Maybe like other external pressure can inform the art, but not like pressure to make the art. I think it has something that's very much has to like come naturally. Um, Solitude is really important for me
Okay.
in terms of my creative process. I mean, I will collaborate with people and sort of like ask questions and my girlfriend is she's a writer too and so and I mean I think that her mind is amazing and so I really will use that as a resource sometimes um, so but solitude is important I think during the creative process I'm one of those people where it's like I don't really like to be bothered I don't want to have distractions I want to be able to like get in the flow I'm sort of
Yeah.
like I liken it a lot to like improvising jazz musicians like and when you're in the pocket
Oh,
and when you're
yeah.
when you're in the flow state I don't like let me do my thing you know what I mean
Yeah.
and so that's getting there and staying there is a huge part of the process and so I've been able to find my way into that um, before I started writing with music so I think it's just about replicating that in a lot of ways um, and then the biggest thing is like making sure the objective is clear, like making sure that I know where I'm headed at any given time. Because it's so easy to get
Okay.
lost in the sauce, you know what I mean? And like just like create and roam and do all this stuff, but you always have to find true north at the end of the day. So,
So you go in knowing what is north and then
hmm
executing in that
yeah. And
direction.
then checking back in like with that north. And so it's like that's sort of what I mean, I think by part of what I mean by intensity and recovery as the recovery sort of looks like okay let's look at what we did during the session of intensity and making sure that it's aligned with where we're actually headed so like checking in with myself so yeah
Now you mentioned solitude. What about like the physical space? What's your physical space look like?
mm. Lots of plants um
Ooh,
mood
yeah.
light yeah mood lighting I have like a led light strip um that I have here and music is a big part of it. Like the audio space is important. Um, Creating um, that environment is very music based. Um, I live in a basement, so it's actually easy to sort of control like lighting and environment and stuff like that.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I mean, the lighting is huge. Locking myself in my room. Um, and music. Are important for sure. I like to drink tea. I think it's calming and helpful. Um,
Like a herbal tea or
yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah. Like a nice chamomile or yeah, like something like that. Um, I find creative bursts like come at different times. I'm not like super regimented about like I have a schedule that I work with and I will create no matter what, but I found that sometimes I get creative bursts in the morning, sometimes I get creative bursts at, 8 p.m., sometimes they come at, 1 a.m., but um yeah. So it just depends.
yeah, that kind of leads me into my next question. Like, what would be your relationship between discipline and intuition?
Hmm. Um I think that intuition generates things like it's how you extract the art and make the art, but I think that discipline shapes it. Um, so they're both important. They're symbiotic in a way. And I think without discipline, intuition is just indulgence. Like it's just like there's no shape to it. That's just mindless. It's just happening. It's not even necessarily productive, which is fine. I think for some people that's fine. Um, but I also think that like intuition without discipline or without discipline without intuition is like sterile. There's no, um, there's nothing, there's no thing to fill what's happening. There's no content. There's no creativity. There's no anything like that. So I think they both have their their places. I think I intuition comes more naturally to me, and I think discipline is something I've had to work on because like I said, you won't go very far without discipline. You can create lots and lots of stuff, but I think it's aimless. So both of those things together to form structure is important.
When someone comes across your work years from now, what would you hope that they would feel?
Hmm. So what I would hope they feel is what I feel when I consume art. Um, I hope they feel seen. Um, I hope they feel comfort to to not be okay. Um, I think it's important to feel like it's okay to not be okay. I think that that's not a message that we'd receive very often in life. Um, and yeah, I mean, I want people to feel seen because I think like when I listen to music or read a book and I feel like, oh, like I felt this feeling in isolation for so long, and it's actually something that was put in front of me really beautifully by this art. That's a feeling that I will spend my life searching for and trying to give others because there is nothing like that in life. So, yeah.
That's great. Do you think that's a more like recent thing? Like going back to like using Mary Shelley as an example in Frankenstein. 200
Mm,
years ago, like that concept of feeling seen,
mm.
do you feel like that's a contemporary idea or you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. Yeah, I think it's regardless, I think it's something that's fading away. Um, I think that it's
Oh, how so?
something, I think that it's something that like the need to be seen is raising, but I think the feeling of actually being seen is lowering. And I think that the
Oh,
former is because of the latter, you know, because I think that we live in this world where it's so easy to be seen, but therefore you're in this place where everyone is clamoring to be seen. So I think um, there's like an isolation factor there that's hard to find places or things where you feel seen, truly seen amidst all the noise. It's there and you can find it, but I think it's hard, because and I also think like people don't take the time to like. Part of that is like art that can help someone in a place, like a song you find or a book you read. Um, but I think a huge part of that is like social interaction with people that you know and love
Mm,
that actually will take the time um, to make you feel seen by yourself, not like likes and reshares and stuff like that. I think that
yeah.
we've replaced again the former with the latter, and so yeah.
Do you feel like you had mentioned, like the need to be seen versus like uh actually feeling seen. Do you think that's like the last 15 years or so, or do you think it's like
Hmm.
the 21st century as a whole, or like is this a new
I
thing we're experiencing?
I don't think so. I think that it's probably something that's written into our DNA,
Mm.
into humans' DNA. And I wonder like if that's something that maybe started out different evolutionarily, you know what I mean? Like maybe there's an evolutionary tie into that, like survival or something like that. But which is something I think about often. But um I think that I think that it's kind of baked into being a human. Because we need this sense of community so much. Like I
Mm.
think the worst thing that you can do to a human is put them in isolation. And so I think that that's this like kind of the same thing, is that it's tied into this need to be seen. Um, I just think that it's getting worse because the systems that we
Just
use
like
to do
like
that.
the technology can now
Mhm.
enable it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that it's like a little corrupted, I think would be a good way to put it.
So if technology is not slowing down, do you feel like this issue will only accelerate?
I do. Yeah, unfortunately. I mean, I think that I worry about the future sometimes with like the entrance of social media and technology and the internet. I mean, I read, George Orwell and Brave New World when I was a kid, and unfortunately, the older I get, like the more I see those things kind of happening, which is unless something changes, which I hope for. But yeah.
What do you mean by if something changes? What is that something?
Um, just like a huge psychological shift in humanity. I feel like, I mean, science has proved that like looking on your phone and being on your phone and on the internet is addictive. You know what I mean? So unless we can find a way to like care for that the right way, like I think that we're headed down a road that's probably not gonna. It may not like I don't know. I don't want to label it as bad, but I think it's going to be really different than what any of us might expect. So,
Yeah. Huh. What's something you've become aware of lately that you're learning?
um, lately I've been thinking a lot about projection versus reflection. Um,
Mm.
because I think like something that I've been learning with in regards to like talking to people, um, and interacting with people, especially when there's negative emotions involved, is that it's rarely about me. It's just a lot of the times
Mm.
like when I think that it's about me, like when someone I feel like if someone I feel like is cold to me, or I get on the phone with someone and who I don't know, you know what I mean? Like if I have to call some like the IRS or something like that, and I talk to some random person on the phone, um, and I feel like they're rude, you know what I mean? Like it's not about me. It's about whatever they're dealing with. And so I think projection is a huge thing because they are dealing with their own stuff. Everyone is dealing with their own stuff, and it's not about me most of the time. I'm dealing with my own stuff, and I should focus on that. And that's where reflection comes in. So that's where it turns into the situation where it's like I'm minding my own business. I'm doing what I can do for me. Um, and if I feel like someone is dealing with me or dealing with the world in a way that I don't know for sure, then I shouldn't guess. You know what I mean? Like, and
Yeah.
it's always important to have, I mean, empathy is really important. That's something that um, will always be a theme in my life. But yeah, like a big thing about that is like people who are road raging, like people on the road who are driving crazy. Like you can get mad at those people, and sometimes it's okay to do that because they're being unsafe towards you. You know what I mean? And your body is telling you to we need to be safe right now. But also like taking it a step further and being like, okay, well, maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe, their mom just died. Maybe they're really late to a job interview and they really need a job. You know what I mean? Like that type of thing is something that I've been trying to do more lately is just give grace. And I think that has to do with projection and reflection. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great way to kind of dissect and simplify those thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get it where like something's happening in life and you're so focused on that that everything else uh, is like you're like unconscious of it. And so when you are driving down the road, it's like you black out or something.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's interesting. What kind of music are you listening to lately?
Oof. Oof. I always love being asked this question. Because there's like standards that I always listen to, and then there's new stuff that I've been finding. So like part of my standards is like Ella Fitzgerald is always a big
Oh
one for
yeah.
me. Eric Satie is someone that I've been listening to a lot lately.
Okay.
Um, Tool is a band that I will listen to until I die. Yeah. Um, I really love Incubus. They just announced a new album yesterday. Been listening to them since I was like 14 years old. Um, I just started listening to Flume, which is um, some people might, get mad that I'm getting on the bandwagon late, but um, he's a EDM artist that does like a lot of like really textural work. Um, so it's like really ASMR type of stuff, but is also really like
What's
melodic.
ASM? What is it? ASMR.
ASMR, so like I don't know that it's audio. Um, I don't know that actual like what it actually means. I probably could limp my way through it, but essentially what it means is like when sounds feel good to your brain. So like
Oh, interesting.
when you're watching like a cooking video and you can like hear them like cutting through like the cabbage or something like that, and it's like ooh, cool. You know what I mean? So it's like like textural like that, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's a huge part of his work, but it's also really melodic in a way that's moving. So like those two things together are really cool. Um
I know Flume from, I think they collaborated with Disclosure at some
yeah,
point.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so I like Flume. I've been listening to a lot of Flume lately. I also um I've been listening to Likey Lee a lot. She's amazing.
It's like the
She
I'll Follow Rivers,
uh-huh.
that song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she does really really amazing things with melody. And um yeah, I love Likey Lee. I've been rediscovering Amy Winehouse lately. She
Oh,
was
nice. Yeah.
an amazing, incredible artist. Um, Chelsea Wolfe is someone I discovered recently. She's awesome too. She's like has this sort of like metal side, but also like has more stripped down acoustic stuff that I really like. Um, so yeah, yeah,
Interesting. Yeah,
hmm
thanks for sharing.
yeah, no
What
problem.
what's something you're curious about? Let's see. Well, we've been kind of broaching this subject, I feel like, but like what's something in society you're curious about?
Mm. I think one thing is why people fear quiet, quiet people, and just quiet in general, and that ties into a lot of what you're talking about because I think that there's like so much noise, which is like that's a theme in the book that I'm writing too. But I think yeah, like why people tend to fear quiet people and quiet, and I think it's for the same reason. I think it's because that it makes them meet themselves in a way. You know, it
Mm,
makes people um, have to sit with themselves and
yeah.
understand themselves. That I think a lot of people are just not ready to do that. So that's that's a huge theme that I've been thinking about because I've always been a little bit more soft spoken. I've always been more quiet individual, and I find that I've also been given feedback that I'm intimidating, and I wonder if those things are like if they're I think those things are part of the same thing because I mean I'll speak when spoken to and I'll give my opinion, but I think that yes, some people are intimidated by silence, but again, I mean, again, talking about projection and reflection like that is
Mhm.
that's their thing. You know what I mean? That's not my thing, a me thing. Um, I think the other thing that I've really been interested in is like systems of control. Um, I read a Voltaire quote, which is like it's hard to free fools from chains they revere. Um, and so I think that
Uh,
that's like a theme in today's world is that a lot of the systems of control aren't um, oppressive in a open way. They're oppressive in a sneaky way,
okay.
and the system that they're being presented in is comes through like a package that's like, ooh, this is nice, this feels good type of thing, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's something that I've been thinking about a lot. And both of those are themes that I'm exploring in my book. Um, but yeah, I think I'm curious about quiet. You know, I'm curious about why that's such an issue for people. Because I found that like especially with younger people too, that it's just so difficult for them to be in any type of quiet. You know, it's hard for people to sit in a room and just sort of like think about about different things. Like there always has to be the TV on or music on or some type of distraction or someone has to be there with them, you know? So that's something I've been thinking a lot about.
I've been thinking about I experienced this the other day, like choosing to not be on a screen, or I don't feel like compelled, like so I'm in my studio and I'm perfectly fine not being on my phone, and that is a very regular thing for me. I love silence.
Hmm
Like what's your favorite sound? Silence.
hmm
And the luxury, it's almost like luxurious
hmm
to not to experience that because the default is just noise, but I feel like it's such an advantage and it's this luxury, but this is literally what people experience on a daily basis. Like Mary Shelley, she's probably in silence most of the time,
hmm
and the only time you hear music is when you go to like
hmm
like a harvest festival and there's
Right.
actually like someone with a banjo or like a some type of apparatus instrument,
Hmm.
and that's when
Yeah.
you hear music. Your life is pretty much in silence up until like the 20th century, it seems like, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and now it's something that was the default is now like luxury.
Mm.
And that juxtaposition, I think a lot about.
Yeah. And then you have people who will like, I think it's strange because it's like, then you have people who, like, I had a friend who lived in New York for a really long time, moved out here and was like sort of like in the suburbs, and he would play music or play ambience from the city. And it's like because he was so environmentally
Oh,
tuned
yeah.
into it, you know what I mean? Or like during the pandemic, I knew people that worked in restaurants and they couldn't work in restaurants anymore. So they like their system was almost like set to have this sound. So they would find like they call it walla, um, which is just like background noise from a restaurant, and they would play it while they had dinner, you know what I mean, just to like
Wow.
get that experience,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So it's like now that we had that have that in our lives so often, what's the withdrawal look like, you know what I mean? And it's interesting to see how people are different with that. Like certain people like you, like me, might really enjoy silence when we get it, but there's other people that just can't, their system can't do it, you know? So that's interesting to me to think about, you know?
Yeah.
So,
What are you curious about in general?
hmm. I'm curious about like the intersection of art and science. I think that those two things work together in a way that other subjects don't. And I mean, obviously that's like a big, those are umbrellas, big umbrellas. But I'm interested in like what art and like what we were just talking about, like what art does to the body and why it does that. You know, like what's happening in the brain through the ears when we listen to music and why does that feel so good? Like what's the
Hmm.
interpretation, the biological interpretation of art? That's something that I really am focused on. When I was in grad school, my dissertation was about um, I'm not sure if you're familiar with binaural beats at all.
No.
So it's sort of like it's a therapeutic type of audio where it can the idea is that it puts your brain on a track, like a frequency, so that you can get a desired out like effect from your brain being on a certain frequency, whether
Hmm.
that's slower or higher, because we tend to vibrate, brain frequencies tend to vibrate higher when we're, um, in creative spaces or, going through um, deep focus. And then it's sort of lower when we're sleeping and
Okay.
relaxing. So the idea is that you put on something that's trying to get you. If you need to relax, you put it on, and it helps you relax. If you need to focus, you put it on, it helps you focus. So it helps you either go up or down. But essentially, like what that is um, taking audio and seeing how it's affecting the body. And because I
Hmm.
think that um, I mean I've lost people um, to drug use, to pharmaceutical abuse, and I think that our pharmaceutical system is wrecked. And so a big part of where this curiosity comes from is like what other systems like audio, like music, could help us with issues happening in our body, with mental health, with physical health, with all different kinds of things, because it's better than like I would rather listen to music than Papa Xanax because they're both addictive, but one isn't going to hurt me in the long term. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's where a lot of that came from. It's just like the intersection of like how can we use other systems like art, like sound to create desired outcomes in the body, and what exactly makes that happen. So yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Where my head went with that is um like a year and a half ago, I did 30 days, no caffeine.
Mm.
I consume a generous amount of caffeine regularly, and so much so I'm like, hey, you got to chill out for a bit. So 30 days, no caffeine, and to like elevate myself, like feeling to get to get some energy, it became very clear that I could do it through music.
Mm.
So I started to like hack into listening to music, specific music to like get a high the way I would with like not quite like caffeine, but like in a sense like um program my body in a way to get a certain result. It's
Yeah.
pretty interesting. That was kind of eye-opening for myself.
Yeah, I mean, what's the the question that I ask with that is like, what's the difference between, you know, obviously there's a difference because one is a liquid you ingest and it's giving chemicals to your body, but it's the way that your brain reacts to those chemicals that actually creates the effect. Like you don't, I mean, without the brain, nothing happens, obviously, but it's just like the idea is that all of that stuff is endogenous. It happens within ourselves. You know what I mean? So there's other ways that you can, circumnavigate to the body and the brain to get the same effect. I think it's just like one is a highway and one is, a two-way lane, uh,
Yeah.
frontage road. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
that's interesting. Well, kind of wrapping up here, in terms of personal growth, fulfillment, success, how do you envision that in your life?
Um, I think autonomy is big for me. Um, the independence, and not like, and then that's a different definition. Everyone has a different definition of independence. Obviously, you have to be collaborative and work with people at some point. Um, and I enjoy doing that. But I think like yeah, autonomy, being able to have my own decisions, um, and really like work, um, because I know that I'm good with being accountable to myself and to others, obviously. But if I can be accountable to myself, that's usually a system that I will thrive in. Um, and I think making something that resonates beyond me, like with music, that's the goal, right? Is like you put out music because it's fun to make, you like it, but also you're wanting it to reach beyond you. And it's the same way with writing. It's the same way with with any kind of art. But with writing, I really would like to make something that resonates beyond what I'm doing, beyond my own experience, and help someone. If I can have someone have a moment of relief, of being seen, of being calm, of being a reprieve from anything that they're battling, I think um, that would be success for me. I want to leave the world better than I found it. So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
great. Well, I've really loved and enjoyed this conversation, Chris. I appreciate you
me,
coming on, and it's been really fun and great collaborating with you so far.
yeah, me too. I'm happy we did this.